Hello there, welcome back to Charles Circle and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we built our first two rail-connected farming outposts out on Isla Trace, as well as finally connecting up to our fourth island and starting site prep for our future steel factory on that island. Today, I'd like to set up a proper rail network for our farming outposts and a mill to process all the new crops that we're now producing. So, let's get into it. Okay, so today's to-dos are broken out a little bit. We're parallelizing three projects, so having a longer-term project management view is helpful, but it's also way too crowded. So the TLDR for today is up here, and it continues to be focused on the farming section for now, but we are going to, as I mentioned at the top, try to set up a proper, scalable farming train network, and so that we can stop just stealing trains here and there from our hydrogen production distribution network. I'd also like to build the mill, which I've gestured to before, but an area to process all the crops that we just set up in the last episode. And by doing so, we'll end up making our first bits of animal feed along the way, which means we can start to spin up our chicken farms. So in a lot of ways, it's a continuation of the parts that we didn't get to last episode, but there will be a lot more to do, I think, along the way here as well. Of course, on the aluminum side of things, we'll keep terraforming so that we can get to our bauxite source soon, and our steel factory site prep will also continue out here. Keep the name suggestions going. I want to keep it open a little bit longer, but we've had some good ones already, so I appreciate that. And if you have one but haven't submitted it yet, please feel free to do so below. All right, so let's start with the train network for our farming eco. What kind of trains are we going to use? What kind of fueling? Well, let's step back and think about what do we need out of a farming eco train network. It's not just about high throughput predictability like it would be with, say, a mine, right? If we are talking about, well, we just need to bring a bunch of iron ore across an island, that's going to be high volume, predictable, same thing, right? That we would almost just use a dedicated line for. And in that case, we kind of want the longest train that we can get, something that has enough power to go, and of course speed is lovely, right? But it's very predictable. On the other end of the spectrum is what we have over here with our manufacturing network. This is very flexible, adaptive, so whenever one area spikes or another, we can move around lots of different types of flat goods. Consider how many different goods are serviced here across just this small area using just this handful of little trains, right? Flexible, adaptive, reactive, agile. That's kind of the other end of the train network spectrum. What we kind of need for crops is something in the middle. So crops come out in pulses. You get a whole harvest of wheat all of a sudden, and then no wheat for a while because it's another harvest of, call it sugarcane or something, right? So the sort of the flow of goods in a crop-based network is going to be kind of spiky. It's also going to be kind of high volume though, right? So we kind of need a train that can balance the two, be quick reactive, but also high volume. And that's exactly, in a lot of ways, what our landfill network already is, right? Oh, well, slag is spiking over here on Silicon Ridge because we've, got to make a bunch of copper because we've just spent a lot of electronics or something. So quickly, we got to get out here and clear all this slag out. Oh, we've just hit a big rock vein in this mine, and so we really got to zip over here and clear out a bunch of rocks so that we keep the iron ore flowing. Reactive, variable, but also high throughput, right? These things carry 2K at a time. And they're zippy. So there's a reason I was stealing these trains, and it's not just that I'm obsessed with how fast they are, although I am, that's true. But I think that they are genuinely a pretty good fit for what we're trying to achieve with the farming eco. So I want to create a separate network of fuel gas trains. They're probably going to be roughly this design, if not exactly this design, but we should keep it separate, I would say, from this network. It's already getting crowded down here. And the risk that I think I should call out, but I think we can manage, is that we already have a pretty significant sector or segment, fraction of our economy flowing through this set of contracts. It's like low-key a bit of a risk for us, right? We really have to keep the landfill export going, or this whole thing comes crashing down around us, including, by the way, the very trains that we use to keep the whole thing in motion. And the more that we move towards hydrogen vehicles, which we've definitely done the last couple episodes, spinning up more hydrogen mega vehicles for mining on Isla Trace and very soon out here on our fourth island as well, like we are going further and further into a dependence on this loop, and more fuel gas trains are, guess what, going to scale this up and become more of a thing. Now this works for us right now because we've been pretty, I would say, religious about making sure to mine our resources instead of, say, using the world map or contracts, right? So we are generating quite a bit of landfill, and if we ever need to straight up mine the mountain, we're still doing plenty of terraforming. So it's not like it's difficult to come by this stuff. But if we, for example, continue to scale up our fertilizer consumption, we're going to need more slag over here, we're going to supply less slag over here, we're going to become more dependent on our dirt and rock, and maybe we run out of dirt, but it's all rock, and this becomes kind of difficult. You can see how this could be a threat to us. And to increase our reliance on that is maybe not ideal. However, the thing that I think does scale in our favor to offset that is, what's another very good source of fuel gas besides those contracts? Well, it's the digestion of a million different types of crops at scale. So if we do end up scaling our need for these types of trains, it'll be because we've scaled up our crop production, which should mean we at least have the ability, if we need to pivot into prioritizing fuel gas production. So I think we're going to be okay, but it's worth calling that out. So if it breaks, that's where it'll break. That's my view. But I'm confident enough that we're going to get away with it that I think I'm just going to steal this entire model, this waiting bay set and refueling station. We might break out the refueling station. I don't love how that works there, but it's a sort of a high traffic area. Anyway, I'm going to hop in here, play around with this, and then we'll make sure to queue up a couple trains and set up a proper network here. So I'm going to dive in and take care of that. All right, so I think this works. We're gonna have to bring in the fuel gas using a fluid train on this network for sure, but that does mean we're gonna need a fuel gas origin station, and that is not something we have yet. So here's what we're gonna do, actually. I kind of think we can swap one of these hydrogen to become a fuel gas export. We don't really need the double up here. The train that does run here runs only occasionally. It's not crazy high throughput, and it's not blocking anyone to load up here, I don't think. So I'm pretty sure we can get away with this. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and flip the direction on this one, and if our trucks can help clear it out, great. Otherwise, we're just gonna wait until this gets shipped out, and then we'll make sure that we just take this line here and continue it along over there, I guess. So we'll maybe get it started and then come back to it in a moment. That's what I'm thinking. At any rate, we should get all of this built. So let's do all of that. This fuel station, I was trying to solve the issue that we sort of painted ourselves into over here, where the refueling blocks up not just sometimes someone sitting in a bay, although that's pretty rare, it also slows down the ability of trains who are queuing up over here to pass through. It's not a huge issue, but you know, if we can avoid it, let's do so. So over here, what we'll have is trains can come in here and refuel on their way into the bay, or they can just go straight through to it. And I suppose actually what that does mean is we need something from this direction to be able to join up here, now that I look at it. There we go. So you can come into the waiting bay whether you need fuel or not. You can also come into the fuel station whether you're going to the waiting bay or not, because this center line is a pass-through and does not have a waiting bay. You can only see 4 here. So let's see how that works. We'll go ahead and code up a network and then ask our train depot to go ahead and make a couple. So I think we'll start with fuel, just because we're going to ask the fertilizer to fuel. I keep calling these fuel wagons. They're tanker wagons. Sometimes they carry fuel. We're going to ask them to handle the sour water and fertilizer component first, right? Take that off the hydrogen network. And I guess also probably bringing in the fuel gas would be nice. So we'll start with at least one of these, maybe 2 of them. And then we'll get into the crops themselves, because we have some buffers that are going to take a minute to fill, so I think this is the right order of operations. So we'll do a new network here, but we'll get the train cooking in the meanwhile. So I think that's right. Of course, we'll have to keep adding cargo stations to it, but so far it's just our 2 outposts and the fertilizer sourcing from that contract dock, and also the, of course, distribution of said fertilizer. So we'll let our trucks get to building all of this. We'll make sure that the train gets assigned to network 10 is not quite the right description. Let's call that farming network, I guess, for now. Give ourselves some sort of icon, maybe? I guess not. Go green. That feels very farm-y, I guess. And once that's done, we can take the trains that we have already on those stations rather, off the hydrogen distribution network that are not meant to be there longer term. And you know, I added a few of these last time, but it looks like we're pretty caught up. I might even just steal one of these and reallocate it. We are going to need some of these loose good version trains for sure. But let's just see how it goes, and once we have an update, I'll come back to you. Oh yeah, we can't ask our trucks to help move things out of here because it's linked to a train station. So what we'll do instead is just flip it around, drain it out this way maybe. I guess, actually, technically, it's probably no longer linked because it's facing the other direction. So let's do it like this. Clear it out, please, if you can. Would appreciate your help, trucks. The other thing we should do, our oil has finally drained over here. Saw this notification finally. I've sent the train along so we can go ahead and clear this all out, including this whole loop, which is a little awkward now that we've started to fill in this area. It definitely doesn't fit our format and pattern, so I don't mind cleaning that up at all. And then even all the way to here, I guess, this is just for our limestone export. So we'll of course need to resource the oil. We've had that out here prepared for quite some time, but we need to move the train line from sourcing it here to sourcing it here. The one consideration is that the train that we're using is an electric train. Is he out here somewhere? Sure, he's freaking out. Yeah, there we go. So he's an electric train, and we electrified to here because it wasn't that far from Silicon Ridge, But in order to have him still be the right one to use, we'd have to electrify all the way out to here. So I think what we're going to have to do, actually, is replace him with something that can actually be fueled along that route. And I think going back down to an old school coal train is probably the move, because we have this refueling station along the way. So we'll do that, and then of course his line will actually need that station replaced. This export station is no longer a spot, I guess, that he can source from. So if we finish, I guess, removing that, does that allow us to do the cool little swap out thing? Here we go. To source from here. Something we're gonna want to keep an eye on at this point now is our oil throughput delivery fast enough here? So we currently are not quite at cap on these oil rigs, and we'll now have to be supplying more out of them. So I think we're probably gonna have to scale up and maybe get this one repaired just to diversify a little bit. Not that we couldn't just upgrade the existing ones, but I think it'll be worth spreading the love around a little bit. So we will need to load our crew up, which means, boy, are we ever going to be tough on workers here. But we'll make it work. I think we can still, yeah. So longer run, I do want to, move to our modular housing setup, but I think we are probably going to need a few more pops until then. So we've got this one we can upgrade, and that one, hopefully that'll get us, help us bridge the gap so that we can at least build some of our first modular before we run out of pops. I didn't fix this somehow. Can't path. Yes, well, that's fine. We wanted you to go upgrade first anyway. I guess he's trying to go do that line before he upgrades, but we'll have him work on it here. So he's out here, he's upgraded, but the problem is, the way that it's currently set up, he doesn't leave here until there's room for him in its entirety over on Silicon Ridge, which is good, I want that, but he's blocking the return now for our slag sour water contract. So no problem, we just need to make the return for it slightly, tighter so that he doesn't have to be in the way. So I'll take care of that real quick. There we go, hurting on Unity to quick build stuff, but what are you gonna do? Our trucks will take care of this whenever they get a chance to, and I believe, let's see, but I believe this should all work seamlessly. Let's find out. Well, so that's good news, it works. On the other hand, he's now the old network, so we do want to make sure that that's no longer something we service with that one. So actually, what we have to do is pull it off. Yeah, that's what it is. All right, we have to pull the fertilizer factory off the hydrogen production distribution network because we still need the slag to go over there. All right, good. There we go. Is he got some sour water to get rid of? Well, deal with that later. All right, but the good news is that our other network, right, our farming network, does in fact have a train. It's our first fluid one, and all he can do is move fertilizer around for now. So let's check on the fuel gas situation over here. We're mostly drained here. All right, cool. And there's a truck grabbing a good amount of the rest of it. Great. So in just a moment, we'll get the fuel gas moved over there. And I think it's officially fair to say that we have more than we need here. So let's move this one over just to start to the farming network. And it'll take a second to get through this log jam, I'm sure, but hopefully that will help us when we need to start moving crops around. But where would we send those crops, you ask? Great question. That probably means we should talk about the mill. But before we do that, I've just noticed we need more trees. feeling we should send our ship to go repair that oil rig. Okay, the mill though. So what is it? What do we want it to do? Where does it go? Well, as you can see, it goes here, but we'll come back to that. What is it? It is a place to process all of the raw crops that we just set up out on Isla Trace. So, wheat we use for really one thing, and that is to turn it into flour. And flour we use for several things, but we only use wheat for one thing. So here, we're simply going to process all the wheat, whether it happens to come from Isla Trace in the long run or not. It may come from lots of different sources. That's the whole beauty or attraction of this model. No matter where the wheat comes from, we can process it all here and turn it into the flour that we will then export to the various places that need flour. Same's true over here for sugarcane. So sugarcane, again, it only comes from one place right now off in Isla Trace, but it could come from anywhere in the future, wherever we find the room and ability to slap down some more farms. But sugarcane is used for really one thing, and that is to be turned into sugar. Now sugar we use for lots of different things. Really just the three, right? But same concept. No matter what, the first thing is always to turn sugarcane into sugar. And then we send it out to our place that we're making cake, which I'm thinking of as a bakery, the place that we would maybe want to use this to make ethanol or antibiotics. Spoiler alert, medical supplies too. Probably going to do both of these things with sugar. The other thing that we make here, and this may change slightly, is cooking oil. So cooking oil can come from two sources, soybeans or canola. Soybeans, it skews more towards animal feed production. Canola, it skews more towards cooking oil production. It's, if you're just trying to make cooking oil, much more efficient to use canola, and probably what we do here in the longer run. But I actually do kind of want to get things kickstarted on the animal feed side of things, and we aren't going to do anything else with soybeans except eventually turn them into tofu. So my bet is longer run that this station here, which is currently soybeans, turns into canola. But then from there, we'll ship out the flour wherever we want to consume it, the sugar wherever we want to consume it, and the cooking oil wherever we want to consume it. There are two waste products, animal feed and biomass, that we'll need to dispose of, also all via rail. So the two building sets that we're going to use, over here the simplest thing, it's a food processor that we use to turn sugarcane into sugar. That's just this set of belts. And we do need to hook up water here real quick. But then on the outside, we output our sugar here on this longer belt, and then up top, that's biomass. We'll talk about how we want to handle biomass later, but I think we're gonna longer run, send it to a central location, grind it down into compost, turn it into dirt, export the dirt for fuel gas, something like that. We'll come back to it. Over here, the mill is the building where we will do all the wheat processing, but also either, I guess, recipe where we would create cooking oil. And the cool thing, actually, about all this is flat good, loose good, liquid. So there's actually only one output despite all three of these recipes. Now we can get ourselves into trouble here, trying to ask these buildings to do too much. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment, but I think we're going to get away with it in the short term. So as long as we have the capacity and the storage room for everything that we would produce here throughput-wise, this setup won't be an issue. Where it could be an issue is if we back up. Right now, these are both putting into a balancer. Let's say we want to prioritize flour production. We have our recipes that way as well. I think it's going to be the higher throughput good in the longer run. Makes sense. But we can ask each of these buildings to do whatever we happen to be throwing at it. It's all this same loose good input. If and only if we don't eventually back up on particularly the cooking oil, I would say. Flour is going to keep moving. Cooking oil is going to be smaller volumes. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. If we need to break 2, 4, 6 of these out to be just cooking oil or flour or whatever, we'll navigate that later. But for now, I think we're just going to set it up like this. I also don't think that we need 10 of these buildings in total either. This is more just I figure we're going to have some expanded capacity need, so I want to make sure that all fit nicely. Over here, same thing, we can easily stretch and expand this processing, but it's just one good. You know, we can't use these food processors for anything else, so it'll just be sugar. At any rate, that's the plan. As you can see, it does mean that we are creating a new rail spur out in this direction. I do think we need to do that. We kind of need to take advantage of this space. It's really like prime manufacturing space, I would say. It's located next to a bunch of things here on St. Charles, but we don't have the rail penetration to get into this area without doing something awkward where, you know, to cross over this road, we have to have these sort of this T section and it would cut over. So I actually do think we have to approach it from the other side entirely. The issue here being something like this, right? Where we have this awkward out and around as a result. Now we couldn't avoid it here, but we can avoid it here. So that's what I'm thinking. Approach in through here. And then these are all loops. Trains just come in here. All of our import trains go like so, and then they'll come back around, presumably slingshot back out to Elatrace, but could go anywhere if we ended up making farms out there in the future. I don't know exactly where we'll take this and have it cut across, but somewhere around here, I'm sure. Not critical yet, but then the other part will be the export. And again, we don't actually have anywhere to send this yet, but we will soon. We've talked about where the hell did I put it? I keep moving it around. There we go. A bakery concept, right? Now this would import flour, right? And turn it into, in one set of buildings, bread, in another set of buildings, cake. And the other spot that we actually already can import flour, now that I think about it, is out here for the occasional use to make sausages. This is also where we're going to send the animal feed. So I say we build this pretty much right away. I'm only going to build one copy, maybe two of the mills, one of the sugar for now. The issue with all of this is, you know, it's this persistent problem that we have with big projects, which is you kind of have to build all of it before you can build any of it. And like really, technically, when we build this, we're going to have an issue here. We don't have any way to handle the biomass just yet. So we're going to have to try to eventually get out ahead of that and figure out where we're going to send that via rail. So we're going to try to stay ahead of those productions. Another reason we're staying sort of small at first. But if we wait until we have all of these builds, it's going to take way too long. So this is the plan for now. I will pause the build of, let's just go with that for now. But all of the other infrastructure stuff should get going. We should be okay on workers. And the other thing that I think, yeah, we have gotten back, so we can unload this crew again. We do have this repaired. Now, if we have to run it, of course, that'll take Unity workers, maintenance, etc. But I just wanted to keep an eye on how we're doing here. I do think we probably have to end up spinning this up a little bit. Let's just do it until we get to cap here. I'll keep an eye on that as well. But in just a moment, we should see this all spin up. I'll make sure that we're all on the correct train networks, etc. real quick. And something else that we'll need to do now is actually add a version of this train that is flatbed goods, because we're going to have, well, some unit goods coming out of here. Really just flour, but that is going to be important. So we'll get that queued up as well. By the way, forgot to mention, I did end up connecting up the water this way. It's a little awkward. I painted myself into a corner by putting the tracks right on the edge of the road here. I like it, and I don't mind having to come out and around, but the issue is basically if I want to keep the shape and width of our road in order to run a pipe underneath, well, we just didn't leave a tile to come back up and over the way that we did, say, over here, right? There's a tile in between here for a reason, and it's so you can do nonsense like this. But not enabling myself to do nonsense like that, maybe not the worst thing we've ever seen. So this will have to do for now, at least. Other things to do. I think, yep, there we go. We can finally flip this over to fuel gas now. So let's do that. All right, so we've got the export station. Actually, I guess this should be hydrogen and fuel gas export now. So this is now on both networks, the hydrogen production distribution network, of course, but also the farming network. That will allow us to send, if I have this correct, do I? Ah, there we go. That flipped around for some reason. So this will allow us to send fuel gas out here, and hopefully that'll actually allow us to refuel. Because, yeah, this guy, for example, has no way to refuel himself until that station is in motion. But very good. So that is a good start. And I think, did we finish building the flatbed train for that yet? Not quite, but very soon. Very good. So there's our first load of sugarcane. Not everything is fully up and running here just yet, but we are getting there. Pretty close, actually. So if I am precise with the little bit of Unity that I have, I think we'll actually start having sugar production, which is pretty cool. So I'll make sure that he can actually get out of here on the return trip. And I think that'll mean we are pretty close to functional here. Hopefully soon that also means some wheat on its way, or soybeans. Let's see. I think we'll probably want to get another one of those trains, because right now that's the only one running all loose crops. So I would say, especially with that distance, we should definitely get another one. Do we want to steal one from over here? Yeah, this looks oversaturated for now. So we'll move that over and maybe queue up another one already. Do you think that's worth it? Maybe. Maybe we'll steal another one if it's not busy. No, this one has a job. Yeah, okay. So let's do one more. We'll put it directly onto the farming network. There we go. You know, I feel like I've been complaining about Unity kind of a decent amount for the first time in, I don't know, 2 episodes, something like that. You know, we could do to fix that. It's a lot of teraflops, but I kind of think we have enough servers piled up that we could meet that demand. Let's throw in a few right away and then see just how bad it is. Hope this doesn't mean I just committed us to building a whole new data center, but it might. I think we just have enough headroom in here. Oof, maybe not. All right, well, the simple thing to do here is to just put this on the lowest priority, and we will have it when we have it and not when we don't. We already didn't have it before, so that should be okay. A little bit of extra maintenance compared to just letting it sit idle, but I think we are going to be able to provide it at least a decent fraction of the time. Let's see. Something else we might consider doing out here, probably could have done already, but definitely as we approach being ready to start mining, is get a hydrogen drop-off out here for refueling. So it's quite a distance to go off to a different island, and when we have mega vehicles, they won't be able to. So we will definitely need a hydrogen supply out here. We'll just add it to our hydrogen distribution network and connect it to rail here. So I'm going to hop in and take care of that real quick. I guess this works. I can almost guarantee we're going to end up adjusting the entire rail setup here when we know what an import-export zone looks like for this factory. We don't know what it will look like just yet, so I'm just going to go ahead and assume this is imperfect. Probably also want to eventually get this pile of wood put onto an export line, even though it'll be temporary. It'll be better than running small trucks out here, because again, this is across a bridge. So we'll get to it, but let's let our trucks build all of this, and then of course that's also going to mean that this rail connection is finally going to need completed. Doesn't really need to be electrified, I suppose, because that's not what this network will do, but that's alright. We can always electrify it later if we want to, and this is on Silicon Ridge, so best practices, let's just leave it electrified then. How are things out here? I feel like we don't spend so much time out here. We were caught up in Silicon Ridge for so many episodes in a row, and now, I mean, it's a good problem to have. It's just running smoothly in the background. That was always the plan, but yeah, it does feel like we were supposed to build so much more. We may yet, we definitely will yet build so much more, but we only built a quarter of the copper. I mean, man, that is a little underwhelming so far. Well, we'll definitely get to it. And our mines are holding up okay, by the way, just to check in, like, it's a decent amount of copper, but we have plenty left yet. And of course, other deposits. We're barely cutting into the limestone here. Made a decent chunk out of the quartz, actually, but there's a lot of this still underground. And our coal mining efforts actually have broken through here, and you can start to see our little underwater pipeline plan is progressing slowly but surely as well. No rush there, but we'll get through all of this as well. So this is all still happening in the background, just hasn't been in the spotlight so much lately. Here, you know what we're gonna do? It's been bothering me for ages that we never built the rest of these waiting bays. We don't need them, but we don't need them to sit there ghosts either, so let's just get them built. That way it feels like we've done something on Silicon Ridge for a moment. Yeah, it's kind of feeling like I wildly miscalculated on the compute headroom, huh? So I've got us cranking them out over here, and pretty sure this isn't going to be enough. So, you know what? What the heck? Let's just go ahead and double this all up, right? Shouldn't be an issue to afford a bit more on the maintenance 3 front. We are, yeah, about 25% of the, yeah, so we're probably spending 1 to 2 electronics 3 per minute on maintenance, which is quite manageable. And of course, you know, there's some power going into all of this, but shouldn't be too big a deal. So we'll get that up and running. We still have a little bit more room in this one, and yeah. Yeah, we are just gonna need to keep cranking these out. That is fine. No problem at all. Out at the mill, though, we've got our first bits of flour trickling in, I guess all the way through to the station, right? Yep. Some animal feed. Not yet cooking oil. I don't think we've got soybeans out here just yet. The biomass is, of course, piling up, but fortunately, so is the sugar. And as I look at these ratios, actually, we're going to be fine here because we're going to cap on sugar before we cap on biomass, right? Yeah. So, all good. Not much to worry about there. It would be nice to get some soybeans out here. I think that's just a trains catching up situation. Is that fair to say? Yeah, we do actually have a decent amount out here. Very good. But it does seem like we are overproducing sugar. I mean, we're overproducing everything until we have a final use for it, but it does feel like the baseline ratios that we have going on here could probably dilute out a little bit, and we could say, I don't know, make a second soybean or a second wheat in here somewhere. But we'll play around with it as we gain confidence in that. Right now there's just so much buffer room that it doesn't really matter too much. Soon, hopefully, enough animal feed to get the chicken farms up and running. Not yet, not even close, but soon, hopefully. Actually, we may have gone a little bit too far in the direction of the loose goods. I think this is more what we want in the longer run, but we clearly still have more work to be done on the fluid front. I think short term, I'm going to maybe upgrade or replace this with one that's on the fluid side of things, and we probably need to add another weighting bay, so I'll do that real quick too. All right, so hopefully that's helpful. Let's go ahead and throw it onto the network itself. And then I'm coming out here, and the other part of this is we're just not generating enough crops, certainly to justify that number of trains, not that that's what we're solving for, but this is part and parcel of the same thing. And I think we need to add more farms, and then I'm also looking at the actual like average production numbers here. We're way overweight on sugar here, aren't we? So I think we will double this up and then play around with our ratios real quick. So we'll still be producing sugarcane here, but we're removing it from everything else over here. It's just going to alternate wheat and soybeans. So let's see how that changes things. The nice thing about having such massive buffers everywhere is we've got plenty of time to react and update if we need to, but I think that's going to be our first tweak. And hopefully the change in our fluid train proportion of the network is helpful over here too, because yeah, we need to make sure that the sour water's coming in here at top speed. All right, so this station's built. Let's throw that on the network here. Hopefully that should, immediately summon a bit of hydrogen. We'll be able to refuel out here. Of course, the timing's a little awkward because we no longer need these vehicles. They have finished up their work out here. I don't believe they can reach up there. Can they? Oh, they can. All right, perfect. Well, we'll have them do that real quick first then. But that means we're in pretty good shape here. And the next step will be to flatten things. So pretty cool. Elsewhere, I am currently combating a bit of a slag overflow. I got a little, I guess, took my eye off the ball. I don't know. Had everything prioritized over slag over here. And that was backing up at the steel factory, among about 1 million other places. So we're bouncing back. It's no problem. We're getting rid of it. Happy to do it. But yeah, just sort of trying to keep things balanced. And also keep things balanced here. If there's something that I have my eye on right now, it's the throughput of this contract. It's no problem to supply all this slag. Obviously, as I said, we had a bit much. It's actually a bottleneck to be able to export the sour water and get it out of here. It just takes a couple trips to sort of keep this all the way full for a train load. I'm not going to do it yet. I'm not even 100% sure we'll need to do it eventually, but there's a decent chance that we will need to expand the throughput here somehow, which might even mean a larger cargo dock here or elsewhere. Something to keep an eye on. And with that, our first shipment of, well, I guess really anything, but certainly hydrogen, has arrived out here on our 4th island. All right, so our refueling is in motion out here. Pro tip, you have to actually add the fuel station as a cargo station if you want it to be supplied, not just treated as a refueling station by that network. And that's what we've done here with this loop back. It took me a second to realize why we weren't getting fuel gas, but we are now. And this network looks like it's in pretty good shape. And then over here at the mill, things are looking pretty good too. We've got flour over here in pretty decent quantities. We've got not too much animal feed, a little bit I suppose. We certainly have sugar. We aren't getting any of our soybeans in here. I guess we're just prioritizing too much on the wheat front. but we are full up on sugarcane, no question. Fine on biomass. So if we want to get chicken farms up, it looks like we're going to have to be like intentional about creating at least an initial stockpile of animal feed. I don't think this byproduct stuff is going to be enough, even though we've gone soybeans over canola. So I'm starting to think to myself, maybe what we need to do here is, on the soybean front particularly, maybe we go ahead and prioritize it out this way and see if we can't direct all of our soybeans to be turned into animal feed. I'm less worried about getting canola up and running. We have nothing to consume it quite yet, and when we do, it's in small quantities, so I think we'll be fine to catch up. So let's try this for a bit, see how that holds up. So I've also decided, at least in the short term, to prioritize the wheat out a little bit as well. The soybeans are, I don't know, they're interesting. They have a really good ratio, right, for going into animal feed on a per unit basis. They're the most efficient, but the actual growth rate of them is, I mean, it's kind of shit. Compared to, if you go one harvest into animal feed, I think it's actually significantly better to go wheat over. So, I don't know. I'm thinking about scrapping the soybeans, not entirely for forever. We want to make tofu, right? But as far as intentional creation of animal feed goes, I think we just pivot on the wheat. It's not like we are dying for bread or anything right now. We have, I think, a decent amount to work through over here still and get over into flour, although this looks like less flour than we had, which makes me wonder, do we have our first flour shipment? Incredible. What timing. We have our first massive flour train coming on out here. Alright, so I think we actually have some servers piled up over here. Maybe we'll finally get up over that last little hump for demand. That's pretty close. It does look like we can occasionally blip up over that still. Is that right? Max capacity consumption. I think we'll add, I don't know, a couple more just to be safe. But we no longer need to boost this. I'm just going to come back to it when it is time to. Cool. So that's good to see. Now our people have, I was going to say all the internet they need. We're still right on the edge. They have most of the internet they need. So our crude oil is working just fine. Let's check in on, there it is. Yeah, all right, so this oil rig feels like it's gonna cap pretty quickly, and the storage levels over here are still about the same. I think we can probably knock this down one level. Let's see how that goes, but we'll take back the pops, unity, maintenance, etc. for as long as we can, no question. Yeah, I'm adding this sulfur working buffer in here. It's just been a little awkward, some unnecessary overflows and whatnot, so I'm gonna jump in and slot this in here real quick. Alright, so the way this should work now, we will only export excess sulfur once this buffer is full and backed up, right? So the issue, of course, before was that in moments where we were getting pulses of sulfur, you know, this would have its internal buffer filled up pretty quickly, and so sulfur that was seen as excess was sent off a little bit early. We've dealt with this phenomenon a million times within the context of food specifically already. So now we have this internal working buffer, and now any excess only once we already have 500 stored will get sent out. I want to do something similar with ammonia. It's a little bit awkward based on how we've already drawn it up. This is mostly supposed to function as a place for us to dump ammonia from our refinery over here, because we do make some, right? We do process some sour water as part of our diesel process. I've paused this electrolyzer, by the way, so that we don't even ever accidentally make any ammonia out of it. Not that this is running very much and very long, but point being, we do want that to all come out here via truck, small volumes, who cares? This is mostly a drop-off point, but we could reprioritize it to also be a working buffer and essentially say, well, let's only allow it to come in from a belt if it's, you know, there's still room for a truck to bring in. Even that amount is probably fine. but we do want it to still eventually, one day, if necessary, be able to export it. So what we'll do is send this around like so, but this is a little awkward in the sense that it is currently prioritizing equally out to where we actually want to consume it and also out here. But over time, that should mean that it will loop a little inefficiently through here, but eventually also always make it out here to these chemical plants. So a little awkward, not how you probably would draw it up. I probably should just like move these up here and then slot this in the middle properly, but I'm not doing it right now. We're going to see if this works. And with that, we are officially done harvesting trees out here. Very good. So let's get those guys assigned back over here where they are normally located. And yeah, eventually we're going to want to get all this wood out of here, I suppose. Probably just go ahead and delete that, and the rest of this I'm sure we'll throw on a train at some point. Cool. So we're pretty much ready, I think, to flatten this area. And flattening this area doesn't require, but I think at least prompts us to figure out where the ore sorter is going to go, right? And we have to be pretty thoughtful with this. I mean, we could just flatten the dirt first and not stress too much, but we might as well think about it. But we should think about where we want this to go, because its outputs, of course, right? Eventually, we'll start with just the dirt and the rock that we're trying to scrape off the floor, but eventually we need to have iron and coal and limestone come through here. All of these deposits, right, are going to be involved. We're going to need to either export or maybe just dump rock and dirt. Oh, and there's a bit of titanium over there, now that I think about it. Not that we can sort it just yet. So we're gonna have to think about, all right, well, where do we want the export stations? Where do we want the beginning and the end of this factory? All of that. So we'll give it some thought here, but that's gonna be, I think, a good prompt for us to think about the layout of the factory in a bit more detail. In the meanwhile, though, our current iron, or rather steel production is scraping because I ran out of mining designation over here. I've just reset it a little bit. I mean, we're getting there. There's like, I know this is all probably visually quite deceptive because it looks like there's a lot. It's just a very thin layer. As you can see, it goes quite quickly, just going down, what, like 3 tiles? So we are coming up on the edge here. And the good news is, right, we have all of this iron over here as well that we actually kind of want to get out of here and turn into steel while we're still waiting for all of this to spin up. But we are going to have to think about getting a train to do that here as soon as that all is scraped out. So soon, I think. And yeah, our little redirection efforts have borne some fruit, and we have a pretty decent little starter stockpile of animal feed over here. It'll probably go pretty quickly, so we're not going to immediately build a ton of these, but I do think it is time to at least build, let's say 1, and see how that goes. Now, how much, we can look at the math already, right? But how much animal feed? 15. 15 per chicken farm. So how much are we making over here? Historically, roughly half of one of these, about 100. Okay. So yeah, we could probably do a couple. Let's start with 2. I don't want to allocate like all of the crops we're making over there to turn into animal feed, obviously, but I think we can get away with 2. Now we actually have to get some chickens in here, right? And in order to do that, we'll have to take them from the existing one we already have. We could quick trade for them. I believe there's still, yeah. Oh, you know what? Let's just do that. Let's even do it twice. And now we should have, there we go. Some in here, some, nope, it all went in here. But let's, I don't know, snag these. And they will grow, reproduce, and then once they cap up here, then they'll also start putting out our meat products. They will put out the eggs immediately no matter what. Cool. So this is good. This is good to have spun up. We haven't caught up with our population's desire for meat and eggs, this entire playthrough, really. I'm not sure we even got it at 100% right when we first built our very initial chicken farm way back in the day. So they will be hopefully happy to have some more variety. And I know we've never made sausages for them, so exciting stuff. Finally to give this sector of the food economy its due. All right, yeah, I have become convinced we need to do something about the throughput here. The issue is that, and stop me if you've heard this one before, we're not triggering the train to run, even though there's a decent amount of sour water here. It only runs when it's completely full. And so what I think we need to do is move the tracks back just enough space to give a layer of tier 2 storages in between each of these modules. And I'm hopeful that that will be enough to get the train to run more often. The thing I can't have is the boat sitting here waiting to either finish unloading or finish being loaded. It needs to finish doing both of those things at the same time so that it spends the minimum necessary time at the dock and then bounces out again. So if we can get it to do that, it will functionally increase the throughput. So as soon as he's done here, clearing out, I'm gonna hop in and add a layer of storages. I hope that that buffer makes a difference. All right, well, here's hoping that makes a difference. I think it should. Let's find out if it makes a big enough difference, I guess is the more precise question to ask. You know, since we're not actually producing enough out here for demand anyway, I just use this as a spot for breeding chickens. So I'm just gonna knock 50 out every once in a while, and that should hopefully send them down here. That'll speed this up. And the good news is, oh my god, yeah, we have some animal feed, so I actually feel comfortable. Gonna regret this, aren't I? Let's do 2 more. Alright, well that's a ton of additional animal feed. I think we're gonna at least go back to overflow on wheat. We're not really using soybeans. Let's do it like this. But we'll be keeping an eye on it. Of course, we don't want all of our brand new chickens to starve on account of us switching back and forth too much. And yeah, so we have some eggs. No meat yet. Obviously, we haven't gotten any of these too full. Maybe we're gonna start to trigger a couple chickens here, but mostly we're still in growth mode. So it's gonna be just eggs for a moment, and then it'll start to spill over into meat and 1/4 by volume sausage, given the 4-to-1 ratio of meat trimmings from meat production required to go into the food processor for sausages. Everything else is in place though, so very soon. So I was sitting here thinking we should have at least like a couple chickens spilling over into meat at this point, shouldn't we? I still don't see anything in here, and oh, actually, hang on. There's a few on this belt. That's good to see, but also confusing, and there it is. What else? But that should fix it. And let's go ahead and start cranking out some meat, and then very soon sausages. All right, and with the backlog chewed through, first 100 meat, first 32 sausages. We'll take it. I suppose if we're going to get to halfway through this set of modules, we should add this second one. I think technically we're probably, yeah, just over capacity for 1 anyway without boosting it. So I'll go ahead and get this one built. Make sure not to miss any belts this time. And yeah, I figured what the heck, let's just finish off a full 50% of this area. So we, of course, are going to stockpile this for a while because, well, where are we going to send it? We actually don't have train stations at this settlement, certainly, and we haven't built this settlement. And if we did build this and start to transition over, we'd still have to serve that settlement, and also we'd need to get a lot of other stuff on rails that isn't yet. As I said, it's one of those we gotta build everything before we can build anything sort of situations. So I think next episode is when we're going to start to really ease into that transition, and there'll be some temporary storages and all kinds of nonsense that will have to go into that, but I am excited to start doing it. Alright, well, with that all constructed, maybe we should check in on the to-do list for today. So, I think our farming train network is an emphatic done. We've got trains of all types, flat, loose, liquid, all sitting here ready and in excess even, I would say. Refueling seems to be sustainable so far. Our hydrogen and fuel gas economy is definitely able to keep us up and running, so that's good to see. The build the mill step, I think, is also quite fair to say complete. We'll keep tweaking it here for sure. I'm not entirely certain which direction we'll go on the cooking oil, but it doesn't matter so much right now. We'll need a little bit of it eventually for like cakes and stuff, but I'm not stressing about it because either way, whether we go the soybean route, here we've got the infrastructure for that, or if we just want to swap this over to canola and be more efficient right away, we have the infrastructure for that. In either case, the more critical intermediates that are going to go lots of different places, flour and sugar, we are definitely off to a pretty good start on. Nice little stockpile there. So looking forward to building, I would say, the bakery, mostly for flour, and medical supplies too, really, for sugar, is what I have in mind for the next stage of each of those production chains. We can definitely say we built our first chicken farms. Not just the first ones, we built 6 of them. The first half, really, of this build. This is more than I thought we'd get to today. And yeah, maybe the animal feed will make us pay for it later, but so far so good. Happy to see that. In the bigger picture, we just touched on, we'll probably be able to make medical supplies too, really as soon as we decide to now. How's our aluminum? How's our bauxite sourcing coming? This has quietly actually picked up a bit in the background, I would say. The rock coming from our various mines here has been mega vehicled over a few different times, and we are kind of close, I would say, to being out far enough to square up and send a bridge. A very expensive, long bridge out here, but that's the plan. So I actually, think this is making more progress certainly than it had been recently. So felt like that was important to show off. I just recently noticed it and went, oh, cool, that's good to see. And then on the steel side, I think as we left things earlier, we're in a good spot out here. We're completely deforested. We just need to flatten, and in doing so, I think we're going to start thinking about the layout of the factory, which is going to be pretty exciting. We've got hydrogen coming in already. We'll set up a wood export station, which quite frankly is probably just going to be our steel export station. It'll just start with some wood in it. And yeah, this should be, I think, a really important, big, cool build, but it won't be nearly as complicated, right, as our electronics factory was. It's just steel, right? Our biggest decision is going to be like arc furnace 2s, blast furnace 2s, a mixture. How do we feel about that, you know? So let's see where we land on it. A few different options. I'm sure we'll talk through them at length, but this should be, I think, relatively straightforward once we have it all sketched out. So we are in a good spot to get that one wrapped up in relatively short order as well. So of course there's more farming we can and will do as we continue to push towards this modular concept, but we've got a lot, I would say, of our foods in progress. We probably need another farm set for corn and taters. We need our fruit and veggies farm outpost, but those two are straightforward. They're just right from the farms themselves. There's no processing for either of those. As we said, the bakery is the last step for flour-derived bread and cake. We've just started producing meat, eggs, and sausage. They're all fully processed. We don't have tofu sorted yet, and we'll need to do snack production, and that's going to require the inputs from these farms for corn and potatoes, but like we're pretty close actually, I would say, on farming. We could bang that all out pretty quickly if we wanted to. And then of course we do need to provide all of our other settlement consumables from a centralized set of factories, but that's also pretty straightforward. And yeah, and then the junkyard for handling all the nonsense that comes out of these things. But yeah, that's all, I think, quite manageable in the coming couple of episodes here, and that will mean that we are really in a strong position to dive headfirst into the space race, and I think all of this work is going to help us get through it pretty quickly, scale it up pretty quickly, which is going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to slamming an asteroid or 3 down around here somewhere. It's not something that I did a ton of in previous playthroughs because, I don't know, I just sort of thought contracts and world mines are all easier than continuing to mine into the late game, so an asteroid's neat in that sense, but like, I don't know, it's more mining. We've been leaning into mining in this playthrough, so I think we're going to lean into asteroids too. At any rate, get excited. Should be a fun few episodes here on the horizon. It's gonna round into form here in very short order. That's all for today though. Fun one. I'm not sure if it feels like it to you, but I actually feel like we've done all the hard work on the farming revamp already. All of our infrastructure's in place, so we've just got to round it out with a handful of smaller builds. A couple extra farms here, a couple little factories there, and we're suddenly ready to stand up our modular settlements. Plus, we're able to break ground on the steel factory really whenever we want now, too. So, be sure to stop by again for the next one. I'm anticipating we'll cruise through a handful of those smaller builds. Until then, though, have a great rest of your day, and bye-bye.